right, everybody, welcome to the latest edition of the Plan the Parade podcast. Jake Middleton down here in New Jersey. We are attempting our first Zoom podcast. We've been using Skype the last few years and wanted to give the new trendy look a try. Jake, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing all right. We'll see how this all turns out. We've never used Zoom for a podcast before. I know you've used it many times before. I'm all new to all of this, so.
Yeah, no, Zoom's getting used by pretty much everybody nowadays. So this could become commonplace. Hopefully, I wish they became a little lax with the 40-minute
Oh my god, yes.
things, but it's kind of a race against the clock. But it's unique. So
So that's what we're dealing with right now is we have a 40-minute limit because we're on the free version, and for people who are probably wondering why are you too cheap for the not get the premium version, $20 is a little pricey. In my opinion, for something that when we were using Skype it was free, and I was looking for other alternatives. It did seem like Skype was probably the better alternative, but we wanted to give this a try. We wanted to try something new, so we might cut it and then just add another segment in, depending on how everything goes. But latest update for you, Jake. I know the last time we talked, it was like you getting kicked off of school playgrounds and trying to get food orders, which I know you've had a really tough time with lately.
yeah, no, I mean it's if you've been following sort of the way the U.S. has been going, especially in the New York area, which is where I live. It's been really bad. I mean, I'm pretty sure just today there were almost over 700, which is more than the entire country of Canada, which is
Uh,
really bad. So we're just trying to, like they said, flatten the curve, and it looks like they've finally been able to do that just based on what Governor Cuomo has been saying. But we'll see. Hopefully, better days ahead though, because it's not great at the moment.
have you gotten used to the fact that there has not been any sports for like what we're on what week 3? It
Yeah,
feels like forever, but we haven't even reached the month yet.
I've sort of like come to like I think I was telling you this I guess a couple episodes ago, but I mean I've kind of pretty much just had the NFL draft that's sort of taken up my entire mind space in terms of sports, and I've pretty much just come to the decision that I'm gonna act like the NBA and NHL seasons are over, and that's kind of what it looks like. I mean, I don't know what they're going to do for baseball.
Oh my god, yeah.
Baseball looks like it's going to have the worst situation to deal with, but yeah, I'm not sure how they're going to deal with it, but yeah, we'll see.
Well, up here, I know the CFL's already postponed their season. It was supposed to start June, like mid June, June 14th, I believe was the date. They've already moved it past, like maybe Canada Day, but I don't even see that happening because they haven't had training camps. Like,
Yeah, they can't. I mean, you can't really do anything, especially because you're going to have guys coming from places in the United States, and how are they going to travel up there? I mean, I
yeah.
guess they could drive, but I don't know how easy it would be for them to get in past the border. So
Yeah, that's the big thing is a lot of them come from the States. Some of them live here. Some of them are, I mean, there's Canadians, but there are some Americans who have made this their home. I know Bill Manning said pretty much all of TFC minus maybe a couple of players are here in Toronto,
yeah,
which I found that to be interesting. Like, I know a lot of NHL players have left Toronto. Like, Austin Matthews isn't in Toronto. He's in Arizona right now
no, with Freddie Anderson, funny
with
enough.
Freddie there. He did a conference call today. I think he's doing a live. Actually, we're recording this at 6:45. I think tonight he's doing a live Q&A with Elliot Friedman, Jeff Merrick. So Matthews has been very busy lately. You know, he had the interview with Justin Bieber, the IG live.
I saw that. That's been getting used by a lot of people. It's pretty unique. So
This is the thing though. Like, we're grasping at anything to talk about
yeah,
right now, and luckily, as you said, the NFL draft has given something to talk about. My thing about the NFL draft, I don't know if you saw the tweet. I think it was Adam Schefter has sent it out, or someone from the NFL Network, that like coaches and people are not too open to the idea of IT guys coming into their basements to hook up whatever is needed to do the draft.
Nah, I mean, it's tough. I mean, especially like I was saying, like the New York teams, especially, and
Mm-hmm.
teams in New Orleans, like Sean Payton had it.
Yeah.
I don't know how comfortable I'd be
Well,
going there. Whether, yeah, that's
that
another
was the
thing.
other thing.
It's just not just the front office people feeling bad about someone coming in their house, but also going into one of the some people's houses who might have it. I mean, it's gonna be a weird situation, but it's gonna be fun just to have something that will, give you something to look forward to. I mean, I think that's what's saved it for me is I have something to look forward to. And I've been so focused on that I haven't really, obviously I miss watching, basketball, college basketball. Would have the national title would have been on Monday, but basketball, hockey, everything. But I guess I'm just super thankful the NFL offseason has given us some reprieve and given us some fun news to chomp on, especially with people like us who are so into sports and talk about it. So um, it, it hasn't been as bad as I thought it would be.
Yeah, so I was reading. So the NFL announced that they're doing like their thing is a 3-day draft fundraiser. So they're gonna do a bunch of charities, and I mean we already knew the NFL draft lasts a couple days, whether in person or virtual. Um, my question though is like the thing is like on top of them having their broadcast and then them. Sorry, I just got a notification. I want to turn that off. Um, them not only having to deal with their own staff, like how many scouts you're probably gonna have to trim. How many people are you're gonna have in like a virtual war room because you're just not gonna have the time. I mean, I'm guessing they're gonna be a little more lenient on the time between picks. Although I
I always I've heard like the biggest issue has been trades, like what are
oh
they going to do
yeah,
about trades and stuff like that. But I don't know. I have no idea how it's going to go. I mean, these guys have way better scouting than we do for
mm-hmm.
fantasy football, but I feel pretty confident if you can't get a pick done in 12 minutes. I mean, that's plenty of
You
time.
haven't, yeah.
This like you just overthinking it at this point. Especially considering we basically know the top two picks already. Um,
It's
it's the draft's already started at 3, so if you are a person that's trying to trade up, you can do this like months in advance or weeks in advance, like it has been. So I don't know. I just think it's people who are just trying to make excuses, and I would too. I mean, it's such a cut or dry business. You either win or you don't. So I mean, it'd be nice to have an excuse if you don't do well, but it's definitely going to be a tough situation with so much money and some like people's careers are on the line. But I don't know. I don't feel too sorry for them.
so your first two picks, who are they for the NFL draft? I know you know
I
a lot
mean,
more about
it's
the.
been Joe Burrow probably since that Alabama game,
Mm-hmm,
and it just looks like Chase Young is a lock to go to the Redskins.
mm-hmm.
I mean, I think he's like minus 1,200 in betting lines, so which is pretty much like a guarantee.
Yeah, I mean, especially with them having three quarterbacks, like three guys who they think could be a quarter. Like, I mean, Alex Smith. We don't know what his future is going to be like. You have, I think they just traded for Kyle Allen from Carolina,
Carolina, yeah.
and then
No, I mean,
they have
I
Dwayne
don't.
Haskins, so they don't need a quarterback. Like it's for sure no quarterback there.
I actually, I don't really like Dwayne Haskins just from
No,
what I've seen. I mean, obviously, there's been situations like with Jared Goff, people who've had pretty bad rookie years or first impressions, and have come back to somehow been fantastic. And I think coaching is a big thing for that. But I wasn't really too high on Dwayne Haskins last year. I thought he held on the ball way too long, made some bad decisions, but I mean, I can't blame them for, wanting to give a guy a go. And it's not like they're taking some interior lineman who, may or may not be good. They're going to get a generational type of edge rusher, and that's obviously a premium position in the NFL. So, um, probably what I would do too. I probably wouldn't have the guts to take a quarterback 2 years in a row like the Cardinals did, but that's
Yeah,
just me.
I think you bring up a good point there in that the Cardinals, they really screwed themselves in that once they drafted oh my god, why am I having a blank right now?
Kyler
Yeah,
or Josh
no,
or
Kyler Murray. It's
yeah.
like you've already got another quarterback that you've given a top 10. Was he top 10 or was he just outside the top
Yeah,
10?
he was. I think he was 10.
So it's like, and then they got what, a fourth round pick from Miami
I
for
think it
him.
was a third,
Like,
like a mid third.
it just
I, hey, I appreciate it. I mean, we've seen so many teams that just fall in love with these shitty quarterbacks, the Bears, and a bunch of other teams like that who just refuse to give up on guys that suck. It's like he's trash. Move on. The Bears are just holding. Like, I would have loved if they went out and got Cam Newton or literally anybody else but Trubisky. And I mean, they did end up getting not the first guy I would pick, but they got probably an upgrade on Trubisky. And I mean,
say,
just falling in love with guys is a mistake, especially if you think there is an upgrade, because you're probably, that's like a once in a lifetime thing. Like, I've watched the Jets for my whole life. They've been really bad for a bunch of years. They have never picked first or second. They just haven't.
no. I think what
It's,
this
no, like I was
yeah.
telling this to my friend who's a Patriots fan, and he was talking about how they're going to tank and try and get Trevor Lawrence, and I'm like, you have to realize if you think you have a bad team, there's a team that is 100 times worse. Because the year the Jets drafted Sam Darnold, they were slated to pick 6. They somehow won 5 games. The Browns won 0.
Yeah, like
And the 49ers won 2. So you have to win one game to pick second, which is just, it's impossible. Like, I still don't know how you can not win a game. That's just impossible to me.
and in the Browns case, they're still terrible. Like,
Yeah, they're worse than the Jets.
yeah.
Like, I watched the Jets. They started like 1-7, and I was like, we've had injuries all year. I wouldn't mind if we got another pick, but I don't want to just completely tank out because it just sucks. Like, it sucks when you go into, you can't even watch the games
Yeah.
because I can't root for them to lose. But if I'm not watching them, that's fine. But I mean, they went out and they won, 6 of the last 8 games, kind of screwed themselves in the draft, and they still finished ahead of the Browns, who people like were placing Super Bowl bets on. An idiot got a tattoo saying that they would win the Super Bowl. I mean, I don't know. It's just crazy to think about, but I mean, it could be a lot worse situations.
Yeah.
I'm actually somewhat optimistic, but we'll see. I always am.
Well, this is the thing I was gonna say is like, okay, 1-2, you're it's, and I agree, it's pretty much a lock. I think the Dolphins, what they do, really dictates how the rest of the draft goes, in my opinion, because everyone suspects they're picking a quarterback at 3, and it's like, okay, which quarterback are they taking? Are they taking Tua? Are they taking Justin Herbert? Like, that I think is going to be the big trickle down effect, because we already know the Chargers. Like, the Chargers are going with Tyrod Taylor apparently to start the year, which I don't agree with. I think they're waiting to see what Miami does at 3. And you mentioned too, like, trades. Like, as hard as trades are going to be, I feel like this draft has the potential for a lot of trades.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's I think it's the best part about this quarantine thing has been a lot of sites have made mock draft simulators and stuff like that. Like PFF put out one that was they partner with Amazon Web Services, and it's great. And I've just been wasting so much of my nights going through that, getting through all the possibilities, and you look at just like moving up and down. It's so tempting, and I agree. I think there's going to be a lot of teams that sort of move up and down the board, especially with for the Jets. I know a big thing for them in terms of their decision making is whether they take a wide receiver or an offensive tackle, and sort of the consensus has been there's 4 really good offensive tackles, and then there's a massive drop off, and then there's a 3 elite wide receivers, then there's a slight drop off. But wide receivers, they're talking about, maybe 20 getting drafted in the first 4 rounds or something like that, some ridiculous. So it's going to be interesting to see. I think there's a lot of teams that I think can improve a lot if they make the right picks. So we'll see for sure. And there's a bunch of teams with multiple picks. Like, I think there's like 3 or 4 teams that have at least 2 first round picks.
Yeah, because the thing is, I'm on one mock draft, and they go with like they say, okay, this trade's gonna happen, this trade's gonna happen, and I'm just trying to find one where I know who has what picks. I was gonna see who has multiple picks.
If the Dolphins do, the Raiders do, the San Francisco 49ers do, and Jacksonville. That's 4.
Okay, and a lot of these teams are picking higher up in the draft, so a lot of them are gonna get that, what they believe to be a really good player at the top, and then you're just from there. That's where most of the teams make their moves. Okay, who has an extra first round pick? Do they want to parlay that into multiple assets later into the draft? So yeah, I think that's the big thing. As a Cowboys fan, the big thing for me is, we had a big departure in Travis Frederick. Like, that is a massive loss, and you're just like, you look and say, who's the top center available, and there's no one in that first round that really.
The one guy that they've been talking about is Cesar Ruiz from Michigan, but probably a little high for a center. Yeah, I mean, especially another loss the Cowboys had was Byron Jones to Miami. So they have a bunch of big holes. There's a ton of teams that have big holes, but they're actually lucky. I think cornerback, they're pretty well situated to get a good player. From what I've been heard, there's a lot of really good cornerbacks. So.
And this is the thing I think the Cowboys have to figure out is don't reach to get a cornerback, because they've done that before. Like when they got Morris Claiborne all those years ago, they traded up to get him, and I think there were some better players that went after him. Like, I think they have other issues on the defensive line as well that they want to address, which hasn't really worked out for them recently. Like, their first round picks. Recently, there have been quite a few that haven't worked out, and there's some that have. So I think that's what I'm looking forward to. Is I don't see the Cowboys making a trade to move up or anything, but considering how tight their salary cap is, like they can't just go out and sign a center. They can't really trade for one. Like no team is trading a center.
Centers they're hard to find. I mean, they're probably the second hardest to find behind left tackles, because it's like basically the captain of the entire line. It's difficult. Important. I mean, the Jets have actually been pretty blessed to have really good centers, and once they lost them, it's a big difference. I mean, once they had Kevin Mawai, who's a Hall of Famer. Then they had then they went right into Nick Mangold, who's another Hall of Famer. And since he retired, it's just been a revolving door. And they're so bad, some of the centers they had. They just signed a new one, so hopefully he's good, but he can't be worse than what they had this past year. He was horrific. So, I mean, 2 years ago, they had a guy that I think botched like 4 or 5 snaps in a year. It was ridiculous.
Oh, I keep forgetting I have this phone plugged in. Hold on, people. My bad. Just unplug that. There we go. I always forget about this phone. I forget that sometimes, in a house you have a landline. And people always call at 7 o'clock. It's like, it's like clockwork. The one thing I wanted to bring, and you brought up about Frederick, about centers and them being the captain of the line. This past season, the Cowboys allowed the second fewest sacks in the NFL, which I found strange. I thought Dak got sacked a lot. Apparently it wasn't a thing. He had 23. When Frederick was out in 2018 with that disease, that really led to his decision to retire, they had twice as many. They had 56. Like,
yeah, that's insane.
Such a massive difference. So I'm glad the NFL draft is happening because there's not much else to really look forward to. Like, I watch wrestling. I guarantee, like, WrestleMania did ridiculous numbers on social media and digital streaming. Like, the NFL draft is I think they're gonna have issues with overloading of servers and stuff like that. I think it's gonna be a tough one for broadcasters, especially because it's like you can't get the crew to be in one location. I don't really know how ESPN's doing their shows lately, like, or how NFL Network's been doing their shows. I haven't been watching a lot of them, but I'm gonna guess they're gonna be impacted the most because they can't just have everyone come to the studio. It's just not gonna work. I don't know. Like here in Canada, we've been doing most of our shows remotely. We haven't really been doing shows. Nothing really to do.
No, I have no idea how it's gonna go.
So I think maybe that's the intriguing part about it is that what are they going to do and how are they going to do it? I was editing a story today for Sportsnet, and the assistant GM of the Montreal Canadiens said that a lot of NHL teams are going to be looking at how the NFL draft goes because that's the draft that kind of simulates what every sports league does. I mean, the NFL draft is just on a way bigger spectrum than the NHL. And maybe the NHL is probably second to that, just because there's just so much like that teams rely on in those drafts. That the NFL, it's not like the NBA draft where some teams they draft and like, okay, this guy could be a player for us within a few years. Like, no, the NFL draft is like, we might need our fourth round pick to make some starts at some point because of injuries. Like the NHL draft, first and second round, first round.
It's a lot more projectable in
Exactly.
baseball and hockey. I mean, that's why if you have to rank it, it basically goes NFL,
Yeah.
NBA, NHL, MLB because it goes by who's going to make the quickest impact,
Yeah.
and those are the ones. Has to do a lot with the age limits for it. I mean, hockey, you got 18-year-olds, and college
Mm-hmm.
football, I believe the youngest you can be is 20. So
Yeah, and the NHL one is very intriguing to me because they theirs is based on how the end of the regular season, just like the NBA one is. But like the NFL draft is before the season. It's well before the season, before training camp. And the MLB draft, there's a couple of them. Like this is
yeah, there's a draft, international signing period,
yeah.
and stuff like that. But yeah, I have no idea how it's going to go, especially with the way the draft date is. I believe the draft lottery is probably in like a week or something like that.
For the NHL.
I thought it was like the 19th or something.
So the NHL lottery draft was supposed to be today. It was
Really?
supposed to be today. That's the initial. That was because this today was supposed to be night one of the playoffs.
Yeah, right.
We should have been watching playoff hockey today, and instead we are wondering not only how the regular season's going to finish, but how's the NHL draft lottery going to play out. Like they have to do one.
Right.
I think because they have to, get the final seedings in the regular season to know where the teams that are just outside of the playoffs where they finish. Gary Bettman recently said that he's not sure if finishing the regular season is going to be possible, which, I mean, I agree. I don't think you're going to get a full 82 games. There's just no way.
No, it would be stupid too.
They do need to get at least a couple of games to get ready for the playoffs. Like, if you think NHL players are going to be ready.
I think if it reaches the end of May or June, I think you should just scrap it.
I don't like the idea. Yeah, I don't like the idea of them playing in August. Sure,
It would be later than that. Like, and then you gotta do free agency, and then you're gonna start up the season, and like 3 months later. I mean, it just doesn't make sense because then you're not just ruining one season, you're ruining two.
Yeah, it's so tough because we have no idea where things are going. Like, I think the MLB is the only league that's trying to figure out a way to start get games going. Like they're
Yeah, they
trying,
got to do it. They got to do it like as soon as possible, pretty much.
and the problem is, where are the players right now? Some of them are in Florida because that's where they spend their off season. There was that idea of playing in Arizona with no fans, which I mean I don't know how Arizona is affected by the coronavirus, but again, you are taking players, putting them into airports, putting them on planes, getting to that city, going through airports again. This is how COVID-19 got to the point of it where it is. People move from A to B. You have the virus. You can easily give that to one or two people that are close to you, and those people get into contact with other people. It's just so tough. But yeah, MLB has to start their season at some point. I think they should be looking at shortening their season if they haven't already.
Yeah, they gotta. I mean, they have to get over the idea that they want to play 162 games.
Yeah.
Play 100, play 81. Like, who cares? Just don't put this much stress on schedules and guys having to play double headers and stuff like that. I mean,
Yeah.
just cut the season, and honestly, it would probably make it better
It would, because the games would
because
just
it,
mean that
it would
much
also
more.
make it a lot less predictable, especially for us who are fans of like a pretty not shitty team, but not a
Mediocre
team that was
team. Yeah.
not a team projected to make the playoffs. But I honestly I think pretty good idea would be to go back and look at what standings were after the first 100 games and see how different they would have been.
Yeah. A lot of teams, you really, what, July is like, when the trade deadline happens, and then that's like July and August are really when you figure out where you are in the standings. Like September for a lot of teams, there's the couple that have the races for the wild card. Well, it also just means more urgency to not take your time to get things going. Like you got to be on the ball right at the start of the season. No lull
Yeah,
period.
exactly.
So that is something that's very intriguing to me. Is I don't, as a fan, I mean, I'm not a hardcore baseball fan, but I don't think I can do double headers. Not just one or two. Like we're talking about a bunch of double headers. I don't think the players would want to do that either. That's just what
No,
it.
it would be super taxing, especially on bullpens and pitching and stuff like that. I mean, we've kind of seen what's gone on with players already opting out of seasons. I mean, Chris Sale, Noah Syndergaard are guys who have just said, "Fuck it, I'm going to get,
Yeah,
whatever ails me, I'll get the surgery," because they're not even sure if they'll play this year. And I mean, it's a smart idea. I would probably do the same thing. Like if you had any issue where you thought, rehab would take a while, I just get it over with now.
and your insurance would also cover any lost salary, right? A
Yeah,
lot of
pretty much.
players
Yeah.
are worried about how this season's going to impact the city.
Especially if, I mean, if you're injured, while playing on, obviously these guys are
Yeah,
getting Tommy John surgery, they're going to get paid anyway.
that's the thing, right? And a lot of players in a lot of leagues are worried about how this is going to affect their revenue and how it's going to affect their pay. Like, I'm going to give you the CFL example because I know the big thing about it is that they don't make a lot of money. So if they don't play, then there's already reduced salary, or not so high salary gets reduced even further. Like, I understand the desire to want to play as much, so you maximize revenue and you maximize um, how much you make. But one thing I don't think people realize or are realizing, like let's say MLB comes back before NBA and the NHL. You don't think Blue Jays fans, if they were to eventually have games, wouldn't try their best to get tickets and see a pretty good
Just something to
spike in
do.
attendance?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. No, just something to do. I also don't think it would be, the worst thing. I think it would be great for, some of these struggling rebuilding teams like the Blue Jays, the White Sox, um, other teams like, Seattle. What's another younger team? Maybe like Pittsburgh and Cincinnati, San Diego, just to see
mhm.
how they do after 100 games. And I actually did. I went back and I looked and at how different the playoffs would be if they only did 100 games, and I can't see anything to change. It would be the Yankees, Houston, Minnesota, Oakland, and Cleveland. So the only team that would come out would be Cleveland instead
Who?
of Tampa, who was
Okay.
2.5 back at that thing. And then in the NL, it's the Dodgers, Atlanta, the Cubs, St. Louis, and Washington. And the only one that came out would be the Cubs, and they would have been replaced by Milwaukee. So I mean, it's not like it's any different.
No, I think that's the big thing is that the NHL, as much as like players are saying, oh, we deserve the chance to see we would make the playoffs.
How many
Yeah,
realistically? What, like seven or six teams are already locked in the NHL. I mean, the Leafs I know are 3 points in, but Tampa's gone, Boston's gone, Washington's gone, Philly's gone, Pittsburgh's gone.
it's
Out west, St. Louis is probably the only one that's like really gone. But
Colorado. I think was really close to them too.
yeah, Dallas was too. Um, maybe Vegas was kind of pulling away, but it was pretty close. So
The only ones that were really like was just that second wild card, the wild card positions. So the thing is though, is like okay, you're banking on last minute to get in, which I get it because you believe you have an 82 game schedule to get it done, but we've seen it in the past where we've even seen it an extra game being played to get NHL teams in. I think that's how the Flyers got in the year they went to the Cup final. I also just think that this is no normal situation. You kind of have to bite the bullet a little bit in some way because you have to decide what's more important: getting your playoffs where the majority of your revenue comes in, a good part of your revenue comes in, or to be fair, or actually I think the way they would do it would be fair, but to try to level the playing field, which I think would just be too tough at this point.
yeah, it's way too difficult. Maybe, I mean, how many games were played by teams? It was like 72, right? How
Majority
many?
of teams were at 70, 71. There's a couple like the Islanders had 68. The Leafs had 70. A couple teams had 71. Like so between like the 68, let's say 68 to 70 range.
So like realistically, I mean, maybe if you had to, because I mean, obviously you can't just jump into playoff hockey. Maybe you would do 75 games played or
Yeah.
72 or something like that, just so they can sort of make it so it's not in by point percentage, it's by games played. Maybe you can get 72 or 75 games, but you can't do a whole 82.
I think you
I
do
mean,
75 and be like
it would
you like
save you probably two or 3 weeks of games.
yeah, cuz if you do 75 then that means you're not going to get the final 7. 7 games, you're not getting 7 games done. Yeah, it's going to take 2 weeks. The max you would do in a week is 4.
Yeah.
You're not doing
For
5.
you, what's your drop dead date for if the season hasn't started, just end it?
It,
I have one in mind.
okay, so it takes at least 2 months for the playoffs. So my drop dead date would be June 10th, like around that time.
Wow. I said Canada Day.
Wow. I'm because the way I think about it is you need 2 months to do the rest of the season. You need time for free agency and time for the
Two
draft.
months? You mean like 2 weeks?
Sorry, yeah. Yeah, that's what I mean. No, I'm talking about like okay, yeah. So let's say you come back the 10th, you finish those 2 weeks. So the pretty much almost end of the month, you're done the regular season and then so end of June, the final 2 months are then your playoffs. So you're finishing end of August.
Yeah, I mean maybe I could even scroll it back since I forgot the playoffs are like 2 months long. They are.
Well, that's
Maybe
the
the day
thing.
of the draft, which is what, June 24th or something like that. I think that would
Yeah.
probably be about the end of it. Yeah.
The way I also see it too is that maybe you have to alter the playoffs in a way. You have to do instead of 7 game series at the start, you do 5 because You got to shorten. You can't fully expect that some of these series are going to be done. Oh no, we have to wait for this one to go the full 7. It's like you just don't have the time. Do the 5 for maybe the first 2 rounds, and then where it really matters, the conference finals and the finals, then you can try to ramp it up to 7. That
Yeah, I mean, maybe five game series would make sense. I mean, they used to do in the NBA until, like 2005 or something like that.
Well, look at how baseball does it. First 2 rounds, I mean, sorry, the wild card, it's a one off. But the first series, the LDS the divisional series are 5 games. They're not 7 games. So that's where I got the idea from. And because it's the best of 5, that just means you get better hockey at the start because teams are like, okay, no team really wants to throw away a game, but if they're like losing really bad, it's like, okay, we'll just regroup for game 2. It's like, no, if you screw up, you only get 2 more. The other team only needs 2 more wins instead of the other team needs 3 more wins. The mindset would also change. I think you get some better hockey out of it. I would expect.
I mean, the NHL is also pretty fluky. I
Right.
think it's probably the flukiest sport. So, I wouldn't have an issue with it changing at all to 5 game series in the first round or second round. But I mean, like, you do this in baseball. They do it in baseball anyway. I mean, it's never changing the outcome. You do it in basketball in the first round. How many first round series ever go to 7? Like, none. I think there was one last year.
I'm trying to think. I'm
I
off
mean,
my mind. I can't remember really.
I'll just go through it. So in the East, it was sweep, 5-5.
Yeah.
So Bucks swept, Celtics swept, Raptors in 5, Sixers in 5. And then out west, it was Golden State's 1-6, then Houston 1-5. I'm trying to think of the other teams in there. Oh, Denver 1-6 and Portland 1-5. So there was none went to 7. Pretty much they were all done in 5 or less.
I was gonna pull up a bracket to see if I can. Here, I think ESPN has one here that I can go with. Yeah, like I think you're right. Yeah, in the game, so 4-4, 5-5. So L.A. Golden State went to 6, Houston, Utah 5. Yeah, the only one that went 7 was San Antonio and Denver. And then
It went 7?
that one went 7.
Okay.
And then second round 7, 6, 7, 5. So and the funny thing is Golden State had the
Went
sweep.
6. But they toyed with them the whole time.
Yeah, and then Golden State and Portland, that was a sweep. Toronto, Milwaukee, that went 6. And then, well, we know how the Raptors did in the finals. So, yeah, I think the first round definitely do that 5. The NBA could maybe get away with that. I mean, the thing was, I think the Raptors Philly series was just so good that 7 games is really. I mean, there were some lull games too, but that 7 just meant so much because of the moment. But I definitely think first round, and the numbers suggest that only one series wants the full length. Then you can definitely get away with doing that as a 5 game first round series. Those are things that I think teams are gonna have to do. Like the NHL was looking at, okay, can we get back to playing in North Dakota? Which I was like, North Dakota.
They have a really nice rink.
And that's the thing is they have the nice rink, the facilities. They held the World Juniors there before, but I don't know. The thing is like travel. That is the problem here. Is not where to play the games. How do you logistically get the players there? Enough places for the players to practice, for the teams to practice. Like that's, you have to do multiple locations. Like you'd have to do East teams in one area, or 1 or 2 areas, West teams in 1 or 2 areas. Again, but then again, it's just so tough to make it all work logistically, and I think that's why a lot of leagues are just waiting to see what happens rather than saying this is the plan we're going to go with. This is our deadline. Like they're just having. I think this is just such an unprecedented situation. We can easily come up with scenarios, but we're not the ones that have to make the decision, and there's a lot more at stake with what we're suggesting than what the leagues are contemplating on top of that. So, a good thing though that's come out of all of this, I think, is all the classic games being played. Like,
Yeah, I was. I actually watched the Leafs Kings game 7. It's really weird.
oh, you
It's
watched the
like
game
there's no,
seven.
yeah, there's no scoreboard up, so you have no idea what the score is if you don't watch it from the start, and then you sort of kind of hear them go through it at the end of the period. It's like, oh, it's 2-2.
Or you have to listen to
But
the broadcasters going, you
I
know,
couldn't believe how old it looked. I mean, it's kind of crazy. Obviously, we live in like an HD reality now, but it was pretty cool to see.
I mean, I watched the game six, the Gilmore incident. I watched the two Leafs and Senators games where, man, you gotta like, you think the NHL playoffs are bad now in terms of how the rule book gets tossed. Go back to those days where you would get a two hander in the back of the leg and the ref's just like, all right, that was a good
It was literally prison
yeah, it was
rules.
prison rules. Somebody mentioned I think I was more focused on the Leafs Senators rivalry, so I didn't really look at the series before, which was the Leafs Islanders. Apparently, that series was just even worse in terms of prison rules. So I would like to see that being played. The question I had for you, you get we can break this down by league or we can just do this in general. If you had one game that you haven't seen yet that you want to watch again live, what would it be?
Any game,
Any game.
NHL, anything.
Anything.
Probably that Canada USA game in 20 in the Golden Goal in 2010. I mean, that
Mhm.
just seems super easy. I mean, that game was awesome. That's a good one.
As my brother in the background just waves and drops off a package.
But I mean, if I was going to do something more unique, I mean, obviously when I moved to New Jersey, I kind of started rooting for the Devils until they, had to break up their core. I'd say when they won the Stanley Cup against Dallas, the game 6, the Jason Arnott winner, that game was crazy. I think it went like 3 overtimes or something like that. I always have an affinity for, cup finals that are decided in overtime. It
Yeah.
just seems like such a like it's I know it's like completely different when you're emotionally invested into it because especially with hockey, it's not like in basketball or football now where you get a chance at getting the ball back and you get a chance to come back and
Yeah.
score again. Literally every shot you're
Your
like
heart stop.
standing up, you're like hairs stand up on your arm because literally anything could go in. We've seen some ridiculous goals that have been scored in overtime winners, obviously with the Kane one. So that was one that I remember the most. I'm trying to think of other ones that have been decided in overtime, cup
Uh,
finals that have been decided in overtime.
well, the
There's been
Kings beating the
probably like,
Rangers.
yeah, yes, that was another one.
Alec Martinez
um
with that one.
yeah, Patrick Kane got a one. I think Brett Hull scored in overtime
The one
for the
against
Stars to beat the Sabres, where he was
the
fucking 100% in the crease.
foot
I'm
in the
trying to think of,
crease.
yeah, I can't even think of. I'm trying to think of other ones, but those always are at the top of my mind. But those games were fun.
I remember I've had a really hard time trying to think like, okay, the Golden Goal would be good, but I kind of been watching those on YouTube, although you can't always get the ones with commentary because the IOC owns all that stuff, so people are posting without commentary, so the videos don't get taken down. Another one I'd like to see that I haven't seen from start to finish is 2002 gold medal
I
game.
have that one. It's funny. I actually had a DVD sort of, what was it called? It was like the quest Canada's quest for gold.
Okay.
It kind of did the Canada, the women and the men, and
Okay.
I got it when I was at my cottage, and they were actually bringing out the DVDs on like General Mills cereals. So I got it when I, when we get our honey
Honey,
nut Cheerios and stuff like that.
honeycomb cereal.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Yeah, I haven't seen 2002 from start to finish. I remember I watched that game at a friend's house, and like just every goal you're losing your mind. And so that's one I'd like to see again. In terms of an NHL game, oh, it's tough.
Ooh, another good one would be the Kings, those Kings Chicago series. Those were
Oh,
awesome.
well, that was another one that ended. I think Patrick Kane scored.
Both did.
Yeah, Patrick Kane had one. I don't know who had the
No,
other one.
no, it wasn't Kane. Oh yeah, yeah, Kane had one. No, that was a cup final.
Okay, but no, I think Kane had one because he did that patented like slide on the knees and he's like pointing down or something like that. He does like that celebration. He ended one series against the Kings. I think I can't remember what the other one was, but yeah, those series were really good because like those are
I
two.
thought I thought it was Michael Hanzus who scored the overtime winner.
I think he had one. Yeah, I think he.
I know it was Alec Martinez, or heck, it might have been Justin Williams. I'm trying to think. I'll go back and look at it, but
I'm
just
trying to
didn't
I'm
play.
trying to look it up. There's a game 5 goal. Patrick Kane's game winning goal 2014. Okay. Trying to see. 2014, I think that Kane had a really big game for the Blackhawks.
Yeah, so 2013, that was Kane when he sent them to the Cup final. They won in 5, and then the year the Kings won the Stanley Cup in 2014, that was when they won in Chicago for sure.
Okay. Yeah, those I think like you look back to the Blackhawks, like they had that rivalry with the Kings, and then they had the Canucks. So those ones are really good to watch. Like as a Leafs fan, you're looking for any playoff game, you're going, early 2000s. Like there was that series against the Penguins when they stunned the Penguins. Uh, there was
Yeah, they had some good series against Philadelphia. I know Carolina, New Jersey. I mean, I remember watching him on the old Don Cherry,
Rock'em Sock'em.
Rock'em. Yeah, it was Rock'em Sock'em, a hockey, and another one. But I mean, those were actually pretty good when he had the highlights and stuff like that. So I just remember those old series just from watching those tapes.
I would say like those ones have been a big hit because I think you just have to watch and really just grasp how different hockey was back there. And this is not like this is when I watched that game 6 between the double overtime between the game 2 between the Leafs and Senators, like double overtime. This was 18 years ago, and in 18 years the game has certainly changed, but I don't think you really understand it until you watch it. Like the hitting, the chippiness. We don't see as many scrums, like fights, guys going after each other. Like Chris Neal probably would, his style of play probably would never really work because guys aren't looking to get, go after those guys. Like they're trying to stay out of the box and all that stuff. The game has certainly changed. How the Leafs never won a cup when they had Cujo and Belfour, who were both friggin' spectacular in net for them, I'll never understand. Although, I mean, Carolina, when they went to the cup final, I thought that was the year where they played Carolina. The Flyers one was crushing, if you ever go back to watch those ones.
Yeah, it wasn't like Jeremy Roenick just went off and
Clapper and Sayonara.
yeah.
No,
Alec Martinez scored the overtime winner for the Kings. Okay. And it was in Chicago. I remember watching that game.
That was the last time Bob Cole, I think, called a playoff game.
Yes, it was.
It was the last.
I was in Chicago for that game. I was watching it at a bar.
Oh, and it was also the last time. So this would have been the last time CBC was like
2014. Makes sense.
They were the rights holder. Like Sportsnet wasn't a rights holder at that time. So I remember that, and like TSN had games as well. So yeah, those were. And there wasn't a long time ago, but like the playoffs has just really changed in that time. Like I think because the Kings and Blackhawks were always there, it just added to like, okay, who's gonna get it in this time? Now it's just like it's so different. Like maybe in the East with like Washington, Pittsburgh, Boston, Tampa, like those are teams that have been there consistently and going to the conference finals. But back then it was just so different. Like
Yeah, no.
to remember the Devils went to a cup final. You're
Yeah, in
just
2012, I remember that.
like I forget that.
I remember that one. Yeah, I know because they beat the Rangers to get there, and that was a pretty fun series for sure. But then they kind of got dusted to the Kings. They were down 3-0 in the series. They ended up actually winning, I think, a game or two games, and like pushing it to a game
I
six.
think they
But
won two games in that series. I think
yeah,
I remember there was one Stanley Cup final. So I do this pool every year where you pick games and which games. I was like perfect. I was spot on with that one. I won like $1,000. Was it 1,000? No, that was a different pool. I won like maybe a couple hundred, like $300-400. But I remember the Kings just when they were on. They were on. They were good. They were really hard to play against in the playoffs.
yeah. Oh, for sure. The Devils.
And the Devils too. Like when this was when Pete DeBoer was the coach. I mean, they
Yeah,
still had Bruder. I think Kovalchuk was still on the team. No,
yeah. Kovalchuk, Parisi. I mean, they're pretty good.
like they were a good team. It's just you didn't think that they were perennial Stanley Cup contenders.
No, they sort of kind of had their, usual course on a kind of fall off. That was a bit of a fluky year, but I mean, they deserved to be there. I mean, they beat the Rangers in six, and then who else they beat? They beat Florida in the first round, I'm pretty sure. Then they beat someone else. I'm not sure who it was in the second round. Maybe it was Ottawa or some weird team like that. I just remember it was like the last year of the Canadian things, and I was like, oh God, the rights holders must hate these matchups, Devils versus Florida and stuff like that. But
So this was
yeah, that was
2012.
yeah, 2011-12 season.
So this was okay. Here we go. So yeah, New Jersey beat Florida in 7.
Yep,
They beat Philly.
Philly, right?
Philly beat Pittsburgh. Actually, that's a series I want to see
That
again.
series was awesome. I remember game 2. I was still at school, and it was right before finals, and I think I think Philly won a game like 10-6. It
Wow.
was like they were
Yeah,
playing
it was.
dodgeball in goal.
That was like when
Fleury couldn't stop a thing.
Fleury couldn't stop a thing. I think they had like this was before Bobrovsky. I think this was like Michael Layton or something like that. Yeah, so then New Jersey beat Philly in 5. They beat the Rangers in 6, and then they lost in 6 to LA. And LA that year was the 8th seed. They beat Vancouver in 5.
For
5. They swept the Blues.
then they beat the Coyotes in 5 or
5.
4.
They in 5. And then
But they had 3-0 leads in every series.
yeah, they were dominant.
Yeah, every single series they had a 3-0 lead.
That year, like you look at the teams that were in the Rangers, Ottawa, Boston, Washington. Washington won that one in 7. Good to know a team could beat Ottawa in 7 games.
That Pittsburgh series.
Boston, Washington. That first.
Oh no, I'm talking about Ottawa.
Ottawa and New York.
Oh, that was a pretty good series. That was before they had those bullshit teams with what's the guy that's got the scar, Guy Boucher.
Yeah,
that was awful. They were just playing a 1-2 or 1-3-1 trap the whole game. It was trash.
That's when they had like Carlson.
Yeah, it was him and a bunch of
Sabanet.
bums, and they if they scored first, they play a 1-3-1 trap the whole game, and if they went behind, they'd lose.
Was that? I wonder. Was that the year that they had Andrew Hammond?
No, they got swept that year.
Okay, that was the year they got swept. I can't remember. Ottawa hasn't really been in the playoffs that much, so since so Yeah, that's actually a really good year. I think I'd like to like the 2012 was good. I mean, the lockout shortened year, we knew Chicago was going to win it. Just they were just so good. The year that they went, 2011 was Boston. I remember that. 2010 was Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
2013 was the lockout shortened year. 2014 was L.A.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, no, 2014 was L.A. They beat the Rangers.
2015 was Chicago. 2016 and 2017 was Pittsburgh.
Yeah,
2018 was Washington. 2019 was the Blues.
yeah. So there are people are like wondering, oh, what are we gonna watch? There are a ton of games. It's just the problem is there's hockey fans and then there's fans of teams. Like people are wondering, like I know somebody was like, oh, why are they playing just Leafs games? Like in Ontario, majority of the people are Leafs fans. Leafs have quite a few games you can watch.
They
Ottawa,
played on NHL Network too. The Leafs Kings.
like how many games can you realistically play from? Like they played Habs Flames, and then they play one of those like Stanley Cup final games. They played Boston, Montreal. There was a game 7, early 2000s, like when Montreal went on their runs, and I think like there are quite a few games that you can watch if you have the archive for them to just go through those. But I think that's probably the best thing out of this is like I've grown to appreciate live games a lot more now. When you don't have something, that's when you realize you miss it.
Yeah, no, for sure.
So
It's some of the funny, memes and jokes that have come out of it. It's like I will never take for granted the shitty games that are on. Like I'll never take for granted like Pelicans Knicks on NBA Tuesday or something like that, or Leafs against the Kings, the fucking 1-0 games and stuff like that. But I mean, yeah, it's definitely it's definitely weird kind of going through the day and just looking and being like, oh, there's nothing for me to watch except, streaming services which have been going off. But
I
outside of that,
started Ozark the other day.
oh yeah, that's a great show.
I've been hearing. I mean, I'm only a couple of episodes. I think I'm like 4 or 5 episodes in, and
And season 3 came out, so you can binge all 3 seasons. Lucky
yeah.
I had to wait a year for season 3.
The thing is, like, people keep saying the whole Breaking Bad thing. I'm not getting that vibe yet.
No, this is I'd say a lot more violent than Breaking Bad.
Not only violent, it's dark, right?
Yeah, Breaking Bad sort of had like parts where it was funny, but it was like sort of a dark comedy in a
This
sense.
is just way
But it
more
got way
serious.
dark. This is dark the whole way. I mean, you've obviously seen the first the first episode. Like 10 people die in the first
Oh my
episode, and you're
god.
like, oh shit, okay.
Well, it's like you're right into it, right?
Yeah, right away.
Like,
So it doesn't waste any time. I love it. I mean, I think it's pretty comparable with Breaking Bad, and that
there's
they're
comparisons you can make and like the
yeah,
situation.
but it's different. This is more like of a like when I look at all the surroundings, it's like obviously they're in Albuquerque,
Yeah,
so it's not really like sort of like middle of white trash America, and those the Ozarks, and that's
yeah.
sort of the thing they've gone off with the deep Southern accents and stuff like that. But it's definitely different. I think I don't know. It's an interesting comparison. I'm trying to come up with the correct wording for how they're specifically different. I guess it's a lot more sophisticated. Ozark is, Breaking Bad's sort of like backwoods. Everybody's kind of like a bit trashy, especially with the way Jesse kind of lives and stuff like that. And you look at Jason Bateman, who's this guy that's a money investor, and he's always in a suit or a collared shirt and stuff like that.
Yeah. The
It's
characters are
different, but
different.
it's kind of similar. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's the new thing I'm on. I've actually been busier the last few weeks that I've it hasn't like the days like the thing is just when you go out anywhere it's like okay, do I have my gloves? If I'm going anywhere, do I need my mask? Um, do I need to go where I'm going? That's really the big thing. Um,
Yeah, no, I mean, for me, I've kind of been putting off watching a bunch of different shows, so I've made a list, and I've made such a minuscule dent into it. I mean, I think I had a list of like seven shows that I want to get into. I'm not even done with the first. I wanted to go back and watch Curb Your Enthusiasm, just the new season, but then I sort of got caught up and I've started to watch all 10 seasons,
Oof.
and I'm like halfway there, and I got so much more shows left, so we'll see.
Yeah, use your time wisely because we just this is the thing is like you want to save
We
it.
got a minimum of 2 months of this left, so
Yeah, I think I don't like my birthday is next month. I'm anticipating a self isolation birthday. This is the way I see it. And look, we talk about all this, and there's on a more serious note, there are people right now who are lives are affected a lot more. Either they've got people who've been impacted by the virus, people who have had to work during all this. Like, look, I complain about having to work at home. I'm home. I'm safe. There are people like I see the videos of all the nurses and doctors, the tweets. Like, it's so hard to read and watch those. You go to a grocery store and you see like you can tell even they have like the plexiglass, like the barrier. There's still like there's just so much I wouldn't say fear, but it's just like do I like you could tell it's just so disheartening for them because you know they're trying their best to get through this, and they have to go to work, and they hear people complaining about, oh, my sports games aren't happening or this isn't happening. But I think we just have to take a step back and realize our situation could be a lot worse.
yeah, that's kind of another thing where you kind of put in perspective. I mean, it's obviously different for me since I'm in a hot zone, like New York, which has had unbelievable impact. We've had, I think, over 7,000 people have died just in New York State, which is more than any other country in the world, and that's just one state. And obviously, I know a couple people who have had it. Some people have, unfortunately passed because of it. So, it's definitely a really serious situation. But, the fact that this is all we have to do is just sit around and, not go around hanging out with our friends and watching Netflix and playing online poker or video games or podcasting and stuff like that, just to feel like you're doing something by literally doing nothing is, I mean, it's kind of cool. And it's kind of cool to see the way people have interacted and got ways to keep themselves occupied through this. Like we've had stuff like us where obviously we'd love to do podcasts in person with each
We
other, but
we should have had
we've
more
gotten
out
used to it.
in this time, but we've been. It's funny because we've been trying to get this out for a couple weeks, and it just hasn't happened. Like we're not. I should have mentioned Austin's not here, and that's
Yeah,
because
exactly.
he's got an interview he's got to do, and it's just like we're trying to get. Even when we had job like we're working not at home, like it just doesn't mean that you have all the time in the world to do your podcast. We've Austin has had to do interviews. That's what he's doing right now. We all are trying to keep a semblance of our normal lives together, and I'm just glad that we have this. The one other thing I want to bring up before I forget, because I've been really annoyed um, when I post a story. We come across stories about people donating money or donating their time, and then you see, okay, this this athlete has donated like $10,000, and then you read in the comment section, oh, $10,000. No, these guys make millions of dollars. Or
I mean, I had that with the one that pissed me off was when what's Jeff Bezos donated $100 million, and people were like, "Oh, that's like the equivalent of $10 for me," and it's like, then how much have you fucking donated,
yeah,
you deadbeats? I
look,
don't know. I don't have a problem with people like if you choose to donate, that's your prerogative. That's their
very
money.
much your
They can do
prerogative.
whatever they want with it. But I mean, I'm just thankful that there are people who are willing to, you know, donate either obviously they can't donate their time with volunteering, but just donating resources and stuff like that. It's been cool to see how many people have stepped up. I mean, literally give $1, give $100 million. It doesn't matter. Just the idea that you're trying to do something to help others is obviously it's hard to do with how negative people are, but I mean, I think it's been cool just to see, so many different people donating, what in my opinion significant amounts of money. I
Exactly.
mean, didn't Twitter donate like $1 billion or something like
Yeah, they
that?
donated quite a bit.
So like ridiculous amounts of money. And I mean, as long just the people who do that probably haven't donated a penny. So I mean, they're trying to you can't throw
Or
stones when you live in a glass house.
or you say, "Oh, how much have you donated?" And you're just like, "Well, I'm not the one that has X amount of money." It's like, well, you're complaining that somebody who has money and is giving it willingly, like nobody's forcing them to do it. That's the other thing. Is like, oh, they're just doing it for the PR. It's like, well, you know what?
Even the thing is, I don't even give a shit if they are.
Yeah,
They're donating.
the money is going to something good. Like
Yeah,
if
exactly.
somebody's bragging, oh, I have all this money, I'm gonna go play like online like stuff. Okay, I'd have a bit of a problem. Like that money could be used in better places, but again, they
It's
work
not
for
like
that
it's not
money
like they're buying $100,000 watches and
or
just like
cars or anything.
bragging about it.
Yeah,
It's like the Floyd Mayweather effect. It's not like they're doing
yeah.
stuff like that, just being an idiot or a jackass. I mean, they're donating what they can. I mean, they don't even have to. Like, you're not
They don't
obligated to
have
give
to.
any of it,
That's the
and just
thing.
the fact that you are is should make people satisfied, but it won't.
Like if I were to tell those people, then you should be donating too. I guarantee a lot of them would come out and say, "Well, it's my money. Why are you telling me what to do?" It's like, well, it's the same principle. It doesn't matter whether it's $10 or $100 million or $10,000. What people choose to do with their money, and look, these athletes, they have people who manage their money, and I guarantee that's the first question they ask: how much can I actually give? Doesn't mean you make this amount of money and you have that much available to donate. So I think people just need to just look at the impact that money can have, the fact that they don't have to give it, but they're choosing to do it, and it's going to a good cause. So I think people just need to kind of relax a little bit with the criticism to those people. I understand that there's businesses of people that are not helping either helping employees or asking for donations, even though they probably have the money to get it done. Um, that part is it's a very sticky situation. But if somebody's willingly giving money to help with a cause that money might not even right now do exactly what it needs to do, it's at least providing relief, but it's not ending anything either. People need to realize it's just a temporary thing. We need a lot more than money right now. We need to figure out how to get a vaccine so that people can, alleviate symptoms and not have to wait 2 weeks in quarantine if they have if they got the virus. Testing is still an issue. So I think I understand, and it's not just a COVID-19 thing. It's just a general thing in the world that people just need to relax and not be so uptight about people giving money for something that they want to give it to. It's their choice. They worked for the money, or most of them work for the money, or they run a business that makes money. It's the way that the world works.
Yeah.
But hopefully, we'll have some more sports to talk about. We'll see if there's anything that happens within the next week. With that being said, I want to wish anybody who's having, it's an Easter weekend, so happy Easter to those people. Anybody else is celebrating a religious holiday and has had to modify their plans. I know it sucks, but the important thing is that you keep your health as the number one priority, and the other people around you or people that you can impact. Just think about that and how you can help them, and that's what's going to help us get through all this. So with that being said, thank you guys for watching. You can subscribe on our YouTube channel. We're also on SoundCloud, so you can go to our SoundCloud page, look at past episodes, and we'll hopefully have another episode for you guys coming up soon, depending on how all of our schedules work out.